Hey, do you know what game I'm excited for? Doom Eternal, baby! The sequel to the biggest comeback of 2016 and finally brought back what makes 1990s FPS so great and modernized it for anyone from the hardcore speedrunners to new players that can enjoy it. Well, almost everyone.
Hey everybody, this is my thoughts on the new Doom. This is one of the absolute worst first-person shooter experiences I have had in a very long time. And this issue is compounded by the sheer amount of lore in the game, where you'll just find these pickups all over the place that have lore entries in them. Or you'll kill an enemy and suddenly you get a lore entry on it and it says, oh hey, press tab to view this lore entry and have these readables. Because that's clearly what you'd rather be doing than blasting demons in the face with a shotgun or ripping their guts out or things like that. No. You'd rather be reading. Now I'm sure some of you are just gonna bitch at me, but DW, you can skip that. Sure you can, except that the game's constantly shoving these pop-ups in your face saying, hey, look at this, it's a lore entry, it's right in your face, please hit tab now. Now to give you a bit more perspective, I have been playing Doom and Doom 2 regularly since 1994. That means that I have been playing Doom regularly for 22 years. I know exactly how a Doom game should look, I know exactly how it should sound, and I know exactly how it should play. And speaking of pathetic, the music. Who in their right mind thinks it's a good idea to throw dubstep into Doom? Most of the music just ends up being obnoxious noise more than anything else, and when you get beyond that, occasionally it has something vaguely resembling metal. But here's the thing, Doom is supposed to be pure metal.
But besides that, Doom 2016 is often seen as a surprise hit, which is odd because this game is made by id Software. You know, those guys? The now legendary company that created the massive hit original in the first place? The creators of the fascist-killing franchise of Wolfenstein in the Third Dimension? And the birth of esport with Quake? I mean, they created the first-person shooter genre, for God's sake. Who wouldn't be excited for a Doom reboot? Unless something happened in between the last game released in the 90s, Quake 3, and Doom 2016, which could have caused the company to lose influence and popularity? Couldn't put my foot in it. Oh, right. Well, for all of us to understand we need to understand id Software. Okay, we all know the history of Doom and how it's important to the gaming industry, yada yada yada. But for two people who don't know, id Software is a studio founded by a bunch of guys with bad 90s hair who created a demo of Super Mario Bros. 3 and pitched to Nintendo for the chance of porting it to the PC market, but Nintendo declined, so afterwards grabbed the right to the dead PC franchise and rebooted it to Wolfenstein 3D, but this time more Nazi killing than ever before. After that, they pitched an Alien license game, but it fell through, so they created a new IP once they called Doom. And it was a popular game, like really popular. So popular, it was referenced in a TV show people still watch to this day.
Got it. You guys want to play Doom?
id Software became the biggest thing ever and would become bigger with the release of Doom expansion packs and Doom 2, but things changed with the first game from id Software with 3D polygons and one of the first games to support 3D accelerated cards and got enough clout to feature Trent Reznor of 9 Inch Nails to compose the soundtrack. It was at top of the world yet again, and everyone is following their command. Until something went wrong. Many of the developers behind the FPS classics were losing interest in working at id, so decided to leave the company for greener pastures. But the biggest departure of the team would easily be John Romero, after clashing with the rest of the team over creative differences, would start his own studio, Iron Storm, with some of his friends at id to leave to join as well. But don't worry, id would bounce back from this with the release of Quake 2, which did pretty good with the rise of popularity of esports around Quake. Id decided to capitalize on it with the release of the multiplayer-only Quake 3 and its expansion packs. Wow, imagine id making Quake 3 today. I'll be surprised if so many whiny YouTubers are crying about the death of single-player game. Even with a much smaller crew, id seemed to be doing alright, and it seems to be ahead of the game like before. Oh wait, what is this? Half-Life? Unreal? Where do these games come from? And for people for some reason seem to be more impressed with them instead of Quake. But no more. It will create the ultimate Half-Life and Unreal killer and will look better and run better than any PC game before it. Doom 3! And it did okay. Which would have been fine, but sadly, Doom 3 was released the same year as Valve's hotly anticipated sequel, Half-Life, which immediately blew Doom 3 out of the water. But don't worry, it will come back with a new game to set the standard once again. Hey look, Quake 4! This must be it. Oh, wait, that's developed by Radiant Software, who's using the Doom 3 engine. But hey, innovation takes time, and after 5 years, we finally got Quake Live, a new Quake multiplayer game that plays in a web browser, which sounds a bit interesting. Oh wait, the web browser version doesn't exist anymore, and now it's only available on Steam, so it's just another Quake game. Oh, but finally, only 2 years later, id Software's next generational game has finally been released. Oh, crap! So why did I waste minutes of my time explaining to you something you can Google for yourself? Because I want to explain how id Software became the kings of shooters to the shells of former self. Pun intended. By this time after Doom 3, id Software only has few of the people that made them who they are to begin with. And even with the genius programming of John Carmack with his new engine of the time, id Tech 5. With the $1 million budget from their new parent company of ZeniMax Media, who also owns Bethesda, Rage became id Software's most disappointing game. Rage, if I'm gonna be honest with you, is an okay game, which doesn't sound something to be reviewing about re-evaluating negative received games. But for a game to be developed for years under a brand new engine with supposedly groundbreaking features, I expect a bit more than mediocre. It seems like Rage is a bit more developed for the sake of showing off Carmack's id Tech 5 engine. Here's a video of Carmack playing a build of Rage on an iPhone, which is impressive no doubt, but why? And it is great that the console version of Rage can run at 60 FPS, which is something you don't often get these days. And it would have been amazing if it wasn't for the fact that id Tech 5 sucks. id Tech 5 is something I like to call the broken texture popping simulator, because that's all it does. Rage specifically has a texture popping issue every time you move the camera, and the only reason it didn't show off much on my gameplay is because my beefy new PC can brute force the issues away. And for a company that literally started with a PC port of a console game, Rage PC port is pathetic. With very few and odd options to choose, and there is no option to change the FOV, the frame rate cap, and more that should be available in day one release, unless you can download a fan-made mod that can change all of that. Also, id Tech 5 just cannot run games well on AMD cards, unless it's a ploy by Nvidia. It was so bad that first-party ZeniMax Studios created their own modified version of id Tech 5 to remedy the situation, which caused mixed results. But hey, there's plenty of terrible PC ports of console games and people are willing to overlook it in order to enjoy it. Is Rage one of them? No. You know, when people try to market a game, they will compare two games together because they're the closest to understand. Rage is basically Borderlands and Fallout, and imagine all the things that made these two games so interesting stripped out and add blandness on top of it. That's not Rage! It's just Rage. To prove my case, let's talk about the story of Rage. It's 2029 and Earth is screwed because there's a giant asteroid coming to wipe everyone out. So instead of trying to destroy it or whatnot, governments of the world created a program to store numerous people in underground shelters called ARCs, and for many years created a new society after the asteroid hit. Wow, that's the most interesting original idea I've ever heard. You play as an unnamed US Marine that I couldn't be asked to look up, woke up 100 years later and saved by a bandit attack by a man called Dan Hager.
I'm Dan Hager, and you are one lucky son of a bitch.
After being saved by Hager, we officially became errands boy, killing and retrieving items from hostile environments for the sake of cash and weapons. After a couple of missions, we leave Hager to go to a town called Wellspring to do the same thing again to the sheriff and mayor. Throughout the game, we'd learn about this big bad regime oppressing the masses known as the Authority. Are you serious? And we eventually find a resistance group that will want us to fight against the Authority called the Resistance. You rescue their leader from a prison and retreat to the resistance base in a place called Subway Town, and you need to do errands for another leader for multiple missions so you won't get ratted out. Finally, we found out that the leader of the Authority, General Cross, oversaw the ARK program and deliberately sabotaged them, keeps ARK survivors underground, and recruit the survivors above ground to form the Authority for mass power over the wasteland. After a disk that conveniently has all the information to gain access to the Authority's HQ, Capital Prime, to finally awake the ARK survivors and fight back, we are tasked by the Resistance to break into the city alone, kill all the guards alone, transmit the ARK codes to wake up all the survivors alone. And here is an amazing ending cutscene, you just gotta see it. Yep, that's it. That's the end of the game. No, really. The cutscene just cuts to black and a text pop-up said we beat the campaign. What the? Rage's story is bad, as you can already tell. But coming from a studio whose co-founder said that stories don't matter in video game, it's not a good sign in the first place. But it at least is more coherent than Doom's 3 storyline, so improvement? The reason I dislike Rage's story so much is how unimaginative it really is. I mean, really? Are we seriously ripping off Fallout when Bethesda is your own publisher? And oh, nice stylized art style in a post-apocalyptic setting, totally not like another popular franchise. Of course, I'm not against creators taking influence and ideas from others, that's natural. But I'm mad at how blatant it really is, as if they're too scared to come up with any new ideas of their own or have any sort of interesting twist. It's not like the game is poorly written or acted, it's solid, but the characterization is lacking and it makes the story seem so paper thin. All these characters will have such amazing animation, are expressive, doesn't even last much because we don't know enough about them to truly connect to. And by the time you could, it's already time to move on. Voice acting is the same thing. There's already so much you could do to the script to project onto your voice. So much great voice actors like Spike Spiegel himself, Stephen Bloom, can do, playing a forgettable army captain, and even Hollywood actor John Goodman is wasted on his role as Mike Hager, who only appeared at best an hour until you leave and never see him again. Seriously, even if you try to come back to see him, there will be an excuse of Hager leaving town so id Software doesn't have to pay Goodman any more money for more lines.
You're looking for Dan. He's gone. He went to the town of Gun Barrel. He'll be back in a few days, I reckon. He said you'd be welcome here if you returned.
It's some sort of desperate plea to jump on popular trends for the sake of mainstream appeal without taking risks for maximum probability. Speaking of that, the gameplay. Rage 1 is all about combat, pitted you in claustrophobic areas where you can only go one direction and it's a bit basic. All you do is point and shoot and occasionally chuck and void grenades just like any other game at the time. But at least you're not capped to just 2 weapons, which is great. And at least there is creativity when it comes to weapons themselves. Not Insomniac levels, but hey, gotta give them something. Most of your typical weapons are sci-fi that fits the mold, but at least there are some utter gems, like the fan favorite wing sticks, which are literal metal boomerangs that can slice off the head of an unfortunate enemy, which is always a delight to watch, and special darts like mind control that you can possess and blow up an enemy around others. But there are some that just aren't really as useful, like the toy bombs that if used, can leave you completely exposed to the enemy and change your perspective of the toy bomb itself, so it's really hard to find the enemy without planning. The weapons feel great, especially the shotgun as you fire close and the enemy flies off like a ragdoll. The biggest problem of gameplay of Rage is that the enemy variety is so lacking. There's only 3 types of enemies in the entire game, not including bosses. One that stupidly runs at you with a blunt melee weapon, cowers back in cover shooting, and there's the giant bullet sponges that carry miniguns and flamethrowers. Yeah, that's it. and expect fighting these enemies over and over again in over 10 hours. Even if you're fighting mutants, bandits, or authority soldiers, the core experience never changes. What about bosses? They are completely forgettable, which is pretty embarrassing coming from a company that creates some of the best enemy variety and makes the player learn to use every weapon to their advantage. But now in Rage, you don't even need to use most of your weapons to win, because unless you run out of ammo. Now that sounds like the gameplay is a bit underwhelming, but don't worry, Rage isn't all about shooting. Just like some of their strong influence on Borderlands and Fallout, Rage wants to have its own world too. So it's an open world game, right? Not exactly. You can have quests in Rage to go into specific places, like an open world. You can drive vehicles as a transport, like an open world. So why isn't it an open world? Because it's nothing but wasted spaces. Really, Rage's areas outside the settlements are basically driving sections that you happen to play when you leave a settlement. Nothing but linear corridors for you to drive in and out through another linear corridor to shoot at generic enemies. Rinse and repeat for 10 hours. You wonder why I don't like this game? It seems like id Software was aware how empty and dull the driving is in the game, so they added vehicle combat to spice things up. How do you play? You look at an enemy, hold down the fire button, and win! That's it! There are races to play, but they're boring as f***. Okay, I want to state that I do like things about Rage. Well, some. Well, okay, the animation of the game is completely top notch. No other game before and possibly after has done so much realistic death animations. I mean, look at the animation of that mutant getting hit in the head with a wing stick. The animators responsible just for that should have a pay raise for that alone. The art style, while obviously similar to Borderlands, is a bit different by being more realistic or having a bit more bright and varied colors compared to Fallout 3's green and brown aesthetic. Hey, just because you have a post-apocalyptic game does not mean it has to be ugly. There isn't much things to say left about Rage except for its DLC, The Scorchers. Released in December 2012, it contained a few short missions where you investigate the rumblings coming from a cave inside Haggard's settlements. When you come up, you meet up with a new character named Sarah who helps you with your quest to discover that the bandit clan called the Scorchers have created a blimp that can destroy all settlements in the wasteland. We get a new weapon called the nail gun, which has 3 types of ammos to use, new enemies, locations, and more. Easily the best narrative of the game, seeing as we actually get to meet Sarah, a very funny badass who says the best lines in the game, even though sadly she still suffers the same problems of the characters being underdeveloped, especially since the DLC can be beaten in less than 2 hours. Sadly, there are some low points of the DLC, like Sarah being conveniently captured before we actually stop the Scorchers, because of course it does. The game needs a damsel in distress to raise tension, typical.
Technically, I was about to save myself.
And in the end, the DLC is just more Rage, and if you like that, great. If you don't, like me, it ain't really much. So does Rage deserve a second chance? Well, at the time of Rage's release in 2011, it was a game that people mostly enjoyed, and fans are happy to see a new id Software game for so long after Doom 3. It had good reviews and sold millions of copies, so why does it need a second chance? Well, while it did sell millions of copies, it didn't reach close to any other first-person shooters like Modern Warfare 3 and Battlefield 3, and even Bethesda's own games like Skyrim obliterate in numbers Rage couldn't even do to this day. Hell, Just Dance 3 did better than what Rage did. Over time, just like a lot of games, after the honeymoon period, Rage has gotten a lot of criticism, especially from his hardcore fans being dull and boring. The reputation of Rage is so bad that even when leaks about a supposed Rage 2 started appearing on the internet, people couldn't believe it because who the hell wants a Rage sequel? So yeah, almost 9 years after its release, does Rage deserve a second chance? Sadly, no. You may disagree with me on this, but this game is just not very good. But hey, at least I'm done with it. And let's be honest, those leaks about Rage 2, it must be fake, because who the hell won a Rage 2? Wait, it's real? And the game came out last year? Oh, for sake. Hello, thank you for watching my first episode of Does It Deserve a Chance about Rage. I'm sorry about being away for so long, but thankfully I've upgraded my equipment so I can make more videos much sooner than ever before, and I appreciate all of the support, no matter how big or small. If you're new to the channel and want more, I have past videos up on the screen to click on, and for more new content, click on the subscribe button and the notification bell to know immediately when the videos are public. This is Chem the Chameleon, signing out.